Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to this one-off session on character, voice, and point of view. Exploring ways of being and seeing which can transform your writing, your creative practice, whatever stage you are of your writing experience. I'm a novelist, Ariel Khan. I'm a senior lecturer at Middlesex in creative writing, and I'm also the program leader for the BA in creative writing and journalism. What I'm going to do with you today is talk about or look at ways in which you can read as a writer, so give you some sort of takeaway skills to enhance your enjoyment. I'm going to give you a session as if I'd give to sort of first years in a degree program, so it's a kind of taster session for you as well. You've got a Q&A function, so you can ask questions at any time. Also got kind support Jack from the university team. If there's any links or things that you need, there's going to be space and time at the end to ask specific questions, but I'm also going to get you to do a creative task, as well as the reading, going to get you to apply that to your own writing. So do a short writing task. So make sure you've got something to write on and with, which can be your phone or your laptop or notepad and paper, up to you. Great. So welcome to everybody who's joined us so far. So my question to you, which I hope to answer with you and show how there are different answers to it, is what is literary creativity? What does it mean to be creative? And very often, especially in school, you think, well, it's all about producing. I have to produce this, I have to do this assignment. And one of the differences between that and writing in a university context is we're much more aware that your creativity is a developing process. So you usually get to submit a draft of something, develop it, get some feedback. You might produce something that's a poem and it will look better as a short story, or vice versa. Things will keep evolving. So I've said in this slide, it's all about the process and not the product. And to give you an example of what I mean, here is 3 stages of the process of creating and producing a comic, a graphic novel. It's called Popgun War by Farrell Dalrymple. Now, I've got sort of hard copies of these because comics and graphic novels are one of the things that I teach. So it all started with a self-published zine. So just a little photocopied glossy that Farrell popped into comic shops and stores. And this picked up the attention of a comics publisher called Dark Horse Comics, who published this in the early 2000s. So it's a whole standalone graphic novel. But Dark Horse are one of the big publishers. They didn't have much in the way of kind of royalties for the writer and artist, Farrell Dalrymple. So he bought back the rights and became part of a collaborative publishing company called Image Comics, who produced the sparkly 3rd iteration of this comic. And this time it includes color pages, much higher production rate and better rights for the author, but it also includes the splash page of that original first published version. So I thought it'd be interesting for you to see how even when something is being published, it goes through different stages and different iterations as part of a process. Brilliant. So, as I said, one of the differences between reading as a writer and reading for pleasure is when you're reading as a writer, you're looking for things. You're looking at how did that writer get across this particular effect? How did he make that happen? How did he make or she make me feel whatever it was? And this can, of course, be in a song, in a comic, in a photograph. There's a whole range of media that you'll explore and respond to. So I wanted with you to look closely at a few pages from Popgun, or the opening 4 pages. And I've chosen these because they have no words. And if a text's got no words, it's just images. It's inviting you, the reader, to help make up the story. You're like a co-creator. So In this case, your reading is going to be active and engaged, but to help make it active and engaged, to help you feel part of the story, I'm going to ask you to look for a couple of things. So here are my questions for you. Okay, so I'm asking you in this short extract from Popgun, really two questions. The third one I'll come back to together when we have a bit of a discussion. So I'll give you just over 5 minutes to read and look at these 4 pages, and then we'll come back and talk together about them. So my first question is, who are the main characters? Okay, seems like a simple question. Who are they? How would you describe them? The second is a bit more complex. Okay, it's got 2 parts. It says, where are the key turning points for each character in the story? Now, in any creative piece of fiction or non-fiction, the character is not going to be the same at the end as they were at the beginning. Something's happened to them. Something's changed in their story. The idea is that changes us as readers as well. And one way of talking about these moments of change, because you can have a big change that a character goes through, but it's usually made up of smaller changes, or what are called turning points, right? So if you imagine you've been walking or traveling in a particular way, suddenly something happens, you turn and you move in a different direction. So there are turning points for characters in these opening 4 pages. Related to this is my question of, well, how can you tell? How can you tell in the story that this is a turning point? To help you, usually the writer or artist will change something about that moment or that beat in the story. So in a comic, as you'll see, which is made up of panels or small kind of little squares or boxes, the size of the panel might change to shift the pacing. Something will call attention to a particular moment in the story. Okay, so those are the things I'm asking you to look for. Key turning points, but before that, main characters, and we'll come back after you've had a chance to look at it, and we'll discuss the last question, which is about the shape of the story itself, and that's related to kind of point of view or character who we follow. So hopefully you can all see this. My next slide are the first 2 pages of Popgun War. It starts here on the top left with something hurtling towards a building, and ends here. So these first couple of pages, if you haven't read a comic before, I don't want to take anything for granted. You may have grown up with them. So you read it just like a piece of prose from left to right. So these are the top 2 panels, the middle 2 panels of the first page, and the bottom 3. This is page 2. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes on these 2, and then I'll get you to carry on and look at the next couple of pages. So again, if we were sort of meeting face to face, you'd have a hard copy which you can scribble on or annotate, but just take your time to read slowly. Because the other thing I would say about kind of reading as a writer, you really want to notice, pay attention to the details. Like the difference between where you're rushing to meet someone and a bit late and you're not really sure, what you passed on the way, and a kind of much more relaxed experience where you're really noticing and paying attention to every detail. Because the more you notice, the more productive you'll be. So just take a couple of minutes and then I will move on to the next 2.
Just to add in here, Ariel, that anything they want to submit, they can do so via the Q&A, and I can pass that on to you if you so wish.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Jack. So yeah, exactly as the man said. Please feel free pop questions in the Q&A. Okay, this is page 3 and 4 where we'll end. And just let me know when if you've managed to read just by raising your hands, so I know people are done. Thanks. Thanks, Agneta. So Agneta's done reading. As everybody else, we're very fast. I'll give everybody another minute or so. Remember, as Jack was saying, if you've got any questions to go along, just pop them in the Q&A. Jack will pick them up. Hey, Fab, we'll wait a little bit longer and then go through these together and look at them and see what you discovered, what you uncovered. So I'm going to be asking you questions and just pop your answers into the Q&A. Of course, you can also ask questions there too, as it says on the tin. Great, just a few more seconds and then I'll go back to the first two. Great. Well, hopefully you've had a chance to look through these first 4 pages. Let's now take a deeper dive together. So what I'd like to do is look closely with you. And to do so, I'm going to draw a little bit on the screen. So first of all, who do you think are the main characters? Right? Who are the main people you would say? And you can just pop your answers in the Q&A. Who are the main characters in this scene or story? Yeah, great. So someone's written, again, because it's of the nature of this, I don't see your name. So the guy with wings, right? He's the first action you see in the comics, the first thing that grabs the reader's attention, the first page. It's emphasized further when the readers see that he's in all the pictures below. So fantastic. So we've got a guy with wings as our first character. Brilliant. Now, what's distinctive about a character with wings? What would we normally, what kind of character do we normally associate with wings, right? Because presumably when we see this, right, we don't yet know, the reader doesn't yet know what it is in the second panel. Something here is hurtling to earth. Then here in the third panel, we meet the character wings for the first time, and then they crash into a window at high speed and seemingly get up without a mark on them. So yeah, what kind of character would you normally expect to have wings? When you think of a character with wings, what do you think of? An angel, exactly, right? So an angel, angels are winged iconography, associations of an angel. You see another layer of creativity here, because anytime you or another reader reads a story or experiences a piece of art, it's not the first one that they've looked at. As a creative practitioner, you can sort of draw on their ideas, what that person might be thinking or what they might have come across, play around with those and subvert them, so change them. Because if you look at this character, does he look like somebody image of an angel, or does he look different? What is there about him that strikes you? Because exactly as our first commenter said, right, he grabs your attention right from the beginning, right? There's a kind of violent entry, crashes at high speed into a building, and then he's seemingly unhurt. If you look at this pose, what does that pose remind you of? And what do you notice if you look in a bit more detail? Because obviously each of these is kind of hand drawn. You can see him again here at the top of page 2, which we'll come to shortly. But what do you notice about this character's appearance, and what did it make you think about them? Right, great. So someone's put they've got humanistic features such as tattoos. Exactly. We don't expect, you know, I mean, you've heard of Hell's Angels, but we don't usually expect an angel to have tattoos. So does that mean that this isn't an angel, it's just a winged creature or a superhero? Or is this a kind of bad angel? Is he falling here? Has he been thrown out of heaven? Is he on an undercover mission? We just don't know. What we do know is that despite crashing into this building, he's seemingly unharmed, uninjured. And also, if you look at you can see this better in the panel at the top of page 2, his wings are black, just like the tattoos. But yeah, the tattoos are interesting. We're actually going to come back to them because they're a kind of writing on the body. Brilliant. So our first page, pretty much the whole page focuses on this winged character, the angel. So my second question to you, before we come to our other characters on the next page, I was asking you to think about a turning point for a character. And I said very often that turning point will be highlighted by the writer, because there might be a longer or shorter sentence. If it were a film, they might zoom in, or it might suddenly go quiet. There's something already on the first page. There's a turning point. Did you spot it? What is it? Where is it? Have a look and let me know in the chat. Any thoughts or comments? Remember, like I said to my students, the only silly comment or question is the one that you didn't ask. Great, so we've got someone answering, saying, the key turning point is the children looking up. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's a definite turning point, the top of page 2. But I'm actually looking at one slightly earlier. Is there anyone, any sense? You're absolutely right. That is a turning point, and we're going to come to it in a second. There's even one before that. So if we look at, this is just the first page. The one that you're mentioning is on the second. So any ideas for that first page? Any key moments? If you look at the layout of the panels, right, there are 7 panels on the page. So, right, when he crashes down, exactly like a fallen angel, this is, I'm not sure it's a turning point, because you've got, if you like, you've got these 3 stages, right, of the fall. So we kind of can see it happening, but yes, there's this, he gets up, walks down the stairs, even though he's got wings. And then look at the shape of this panel. This is the one that I wanted to look at with you. So actually the 6th panel on the first page, if you look at it, it's much narrower than all the other panels. Not only that, but look at the hand of the angel here. What does that tell you about this panel? What actually is it? Right, exactly. So Ellie talked about, she said, they said the particularly tall but short photo at the bottom. Exactly, it's much slimmer than the rest. The character has their hand on it. So all of these other panels are simply pictures that we've been looking through, almost like invisible windows. But this one, the character actually seems to be coming out of and facing us for the first time. So what could it be, right? So someone's saying it's an introduction to the character. Yes, that's absolutely true, which makes it slimmer, but also it's a door. It's a physical door, right? Think about when you move from the inside to the outside, right? He's been outside in the first 2 panels, hurtling down, crashing into the building. Then we've got 3 panels of the character inside. This is the first moment of them walking outside into our world. So that hand on the edge of the panel is literally their hand on the door frame as they step out. And then we see in the final panel on the page, the boys, the children, kind of looking up at that winged character for the first time. So our first moment of change or transition is actually here, the first time the characters experience each other, the first time this winged man, this angel creature, walks instead of flies out into a kind of our urban reality. We then have the next moment, which someone already mentioned, the top of the second page. Here we've got another key meeting point. Now, it's interesting on a number of levels. First of all, this panel, as somebody said, was really slim and skinny, right? It's a narrow moment. It's just a moment before the character pauses. This is what's called a double panel, right? So it's much larger, it's longer than the other. So it would take more time for your eye to travel across it. If that's the case, then why is there no background detail at all, right? The whole first page is very busy sketching the urban landscape, sketching the city. What's going on? Why? So someone's asking, right? It doesn't seem to be human. Why does he have human currency? Great question. We'll come to that a bit later on, very soon, in fact. So, but first, let's talk about this. Well spotted with the coins. That's exactly it. This story is asking questions. It's getting us to think about what's going on and why, right? Maybe to highlight his wings. Yeah, excellent answer. Absolutely, because they're in the center of it. Now, I was talking about character and point of view, right? So we've met what seems like our main character, right? Our protagonist, but there's going to, who we said is an angel or winged character, but they're also different in that they're wearing combats, they've got tattoos on their body, they've got black wings. So all of those details are important. But there's another character who's going to come in and be important in the story, who's introduced for the first time in this top panel. We see the back of their head in the very second panel, where they're just part of the whole group of kids. But in this picture, it's almost like it's split down the middle, right? My brilliantly ruled straight line, where one character, one of the children, is set apart from the group. Okay, so let's see. We'll come back to the wings. Yeah, to focus, great. So another great answer. Yes, absolutely. It's to focus our attention on the characters. There's nothing else that we see. Now, potentially also, that is the perspective of this second character who I'm introducing. This young boy here, he's looking straight up at the angel or winged guy who's not making contact with him at all. And it's as if we are seeing this panel from the boy's perspective, as you're suggesting, nothing else exists. Here's something amazing. It's just appeared in my life. I don't want to notice or look at anything else. Everything else in my familiar reality is gone. So that's one version or one reading about why the rest of this panel is blank. You just see the winged character. Now, the boy is looking up, if we can see, at this winged guy, but the winged guy is not returning eye contact. What's he looking at? What's the effect of that? So we've got one character, right? Imagine you're really looking carefully and with attention at somebody, and they're ignoring you and looking off into the distance, which relates to that comment earlier about the coins, because why is this winged character here? Okay, exactly. So the main character speaks to one boy, Ashley saying, and not to the others, which brings this boy into the story. Fantastic. So this boy, drawn and separated from all the others, is separated in other ways. What's different about the boy from the group? Because we said, for instance, if you look closely at a character, look carefully at details, the writer is always trying to make their own characters stand out. So you have a little group, but there's something about this boy, even before the winged man speaks to him or connects to him, that's different to the others. So have a look. What do you notice about the boy's appearance? What is there that strikes you? Yeah, I'll give him a different color, blue. Absolutely, right? Someone says he's wearing a bow tie, right? Really interesting. You can see from the whole setting, this is a very rundown neighborhood, right? We'll see the broken glass in the next panel. So obviously Doctor Who often wears bow ties, but there's something about this boy is formally dressed. So he's setting himself apart. It could be he's been to a party or he's going to, something. We don't know. All we know is he's dressed differently, he's dressed formally. It's if he's saying, I'm not part of this space, I'm different. I'm not going to let it define me, right? Also looks like he's the only black child playing in the group. So all of those things set him apart. Now, the blank space, I was suggesting, could be from the boy's perspective, right? But it could also be from the winged guy's perspective, because for him, he seems to be here for a reason. We don't know what it is yet, but he's looking for something or someone. Now, the boy is the only one who follows, right? The boy with a bow tie, he's the only one from the group who follows this winged man. Now, I don't know about you, but if a being with wings crashed into an environment near me and came out unscathed, I'd follow them. I'd want to know what was going on. But only this boy is curious. Only he follows that character. Right, so someone posted in the chat that the winged guy seems more interested in the broken down or rundown building. We see them here walking down the street, and they actually approach our third character, who at first we can only see sitting here in the second panel, but in the third panel, here they are. This is a guy with a chainsaw. Now, let me ask you something. Outside of a horror movie, what are chainsaws for? Where will you usually see them? What are they there for? What are they created to do? Not a trick question. Absolutely, right? And yet a few people said, right, cutting wood, usually specifically cutting trees. Now, again, this is a super urban environment. If you look at it, there are actually no trees here at all. Not only that, but if you look at the shape of the broken glass behind this guy sitting on his box with his chainsaw, as if he's waiting for something, the shape of the glass behind him makes it look like he's wearing wings. So perhaps, Vasuri is saying, it's a mystery, right? It's involving us, it's making us ask questions and wonder. Perhaps this is what our winged guy has come for. This is what he wants. He wanted. So for some reason, as we'll see on the next page, he wants to meet this guy with the chainsaw to actually cut off his wings. Now, someone was asking much earlier on, where did these coins come from? But I want to ask you something else, right? We were talking about the tattoos. Now, normally, tattoos don't change, right? That's one of the part of their point. But if you look at the tattoo on the winged man's arm, this is his left arm. We saw his left forearm over here, the big top panel. It doesn't have any tattoos below the elbow. As soon as he comes to our chainsaw guy, suddenly there's a big tattoo here with an arrow, and then there's another little tattoo, which we can only glimpse, but here we see quite well. A new tattoo on his arm. Who is it of? Give you a clue. It's somebody else in the story, suddenly appearing as a tattoo on the winged guy's arm. Any thoughts? Have a close look. Over here. Absolutely, right? So someone's posted in the chat, it's the little boy who's been following him. You can see, because if you look at this, the way the boy's standing in the last panel, it's very similar to this. So suddenly, mysteriously, maybe because this boy has been following him, a tattoo, an image of the boy appears on the man's skin. So these aren't ordinary tattoos. They seem to be a kind of a language about what's happening around this man. Now, someone was asking in the chat, so do angels usually carry small change, right? He's come with coins, which suggests he's come prepared, that actually he's paying this guy. Now, I don't know if you know your Greek mythology. So if you want to cross the river Styx in the underworld, right? Charon, the boatman, is waiting for you, but you've got to give them some coins. Okay, so here we have the coins that are given to our chainsaw guy. He doesn't seem too surprised, or does he? Then, framed between the two, we see the boy. Okay, so our winged guy has crashed to Earth, seemingly on a mission. He approaches a guy with a chainsaw, gives him some money. Then, let's see what happens next. Okay, so at the top of the third page, we don't actually see wings being cut off. So instead, we've got two reaction panels right next to each other of the boy. Now, if you look, his body language is really different in these two panels. Anytime a writer repeats something, there's a reason or a purpose, right? We've got the first sound or sound effect that connects the two, right? The sound of the chainsaw. We've got the flying feathers. But what do you notice about the boy's body language in these two panels, right? So here, panel one, you've got him sort of crouched at the bottom of the first panel. In the second, right, his head is actually coming out of the top of the panel. Okay, so have a look at these two panels. Again, this is exactly what I meant by reading as a writer. You're kind of looking really closely at this. What's going on here? What is the boy feeling in that first panel, would you say? If you look at that body language, I mean, if you imagine, I can do a bit of show and tell, right? I'm sitting in a desk chair, but if you imagine, if I got up and kind of something was really scary, you asked me a really tricky question, right? And I went like this, what would I be feeling? Someone's popped a question in the chat. Okay, great. So we've got a response in the chat that says, he looks inferior in the first box, but in the second part, it shows his whole face to suggest that this is the story change, and he becomes the main character. What a wonderful answer. Brilliant exploration of the connection between these two panels, right? So in the first one, he's crouching down afraid, right? We can only see the top of his head. He seems to be defined by this scary event, this guy having his wings cut off in the first panel. Whereas if I get rid of these, you can see it more clearly. In the second panel, his head actually looks a bit like a light bulb, right? You know, when you get an idea and you have that light bulb moment in a cartoon, you often have a picture of a light bulb. So with the bow tie, his head is literally coming out of the panel. Remember, we said in the first page that this is somebody who doesn't want to be limited by the kind of rundown poverty of their environment. They want something more. They want something bigger. So they've had an idea. We don't yet know what it is, but it's going to make them, exactly as this commentator in the chat said, into the main character, right? He also looks up, so, right, so Ashley's also written, he looks up at the winged person and sees a change. Absolutely. The other character's changed, and this is giving him permission to change too, right? We then see in the third panel, the chainsaw guy just looking, it doesn't seem too painful, at the scars left behind. And then, extraordinary moment, we have a whoosh sound effect as he throws the wings into the bin. Okay, so I remember I once did a workshop with this in a primary school, kind of working with reluctant readers, and the kids were horrified that this guy throws the wings into the bin. They were like, why did he chuck them away? He could have got a fortune for them on eBay. You know, the idea of, you know, throwing something unique like that away. But that also tells us that in a way, this is a story about difference, right? That this winged guy doesn't want to be different. He wants to get rid of what makes him special, hide it, throw it away. Now, the boy is having none of that, right? So talking about moment of change or transition, towards the bottom of the page, we've got the 5th panel. It's the last time we see all 3 characters together, right? So our chainsaw guy, he sat back down again as if nothing happened. Our winged guy is walking away into the distance. He's no longer winged, he's just a guy, but he's walking towards something, right? Again, it's just a small panel, but if you have a look, there's something we can see over here, that he's walking towards something that's very much a part of our urban lives. What is it? What's he walking towards? And because it's in the story, what might it represent or symbolize? Yes, someone said exactly. It's a billboard. It's an advertising billboard. We can see a human face on it. So our winged character, the angel, has left behind everything that makes them special, and they're walking off into the distance towards a billboard, towards advertising, towards the urban reality, towards being just like anybody else. But our little boy, he's changed. So, right, if you look at his body language here, he's poised, and just behind our chainsaw guy, he's grabbing the wings from the bin. Now, if you've noticed or followed the story so far, every good piece of writing or creative practice kind of teaches us how to read it. And you've seen there's lots of detail, there's lots of storytelling on each page. We're on the final page now. So we have a whole page of the boy running home with the wings and closing the door. Why? Why do we have a whole page? What's going on in this? Why is it so important to the story that we get this level of detail? What do you notice about the boy running with the wings? What struck you about this page? Love to hear your thoughts and comments. Any ideas? Have a look also at where the boy's going. Why do you think he's running? Okay, so Deborah said he at first was following the guy for the wings, because as soon as the person changed his identity, the little boy loses interest. Or rather, I mean, we don't know. It's an interesting comment, but we don't know at the beginning that he's going to take them off. But certainly the wings are what keeps the boy's attention. But yeah, he obviously loses interest in the guy because now he's just like everybody else. But he's like, well, if he's thrown away the wings, I'm going to take them. And then he kind of races through the streets with these, right? Ashley says he makes a quick decision to take the wings home. And Yetta says he seems afraid to be caught. Yasmin says the boy takes the wings, likely to be a metaphor of creativity and individuality, and is running right back to his home, right? Ellie says you get that feeling he's running quickly, right? His feet are always in the air, someone says. Is he flying? So yes, Yasmin, we saw that appears. Great, brilliant comments. So absolutely, if you look at his feet, right, they literally don't touch the ground, right? So it looks as if he's flying. Often in a cartoon, when you have someone running in space, their feet are in the air. But you also have that emotional feeling we talk about where we say that, oh, I felt like I was walking on air, right? There's fear, potentially, don't want to be caught. I'm running. He runs all the way back up the stairs and slams the door. Now, lots going on here. Great comments from you guys in the chat, exactly as you say. And again, this is that kind of interactivity where in creative writing and creative practice, there's not an answer. There's not one answer that your tutor is going to be looking for. There's your answer. Right, so it's about finding your appendage, right? He now has a purpose, Ashley says, which he didn't have before. Exactly, a sense of direction and urgency. And that brings me to the last question I was asking you, because if you remember, just before we went on this kind of journey, looking at these closely at these 4 pages, I was asking you here, how does the story arc change depending on which character we're following? So if we have a look, right? If you imagine, let's get rid of that annotation. If you imagine a drawing of our winged guy's physical journey, right? The beginning, he crashes down to earth, right? He crashes into the building, right? About here. He comes out, walks down the street. So I'm just drawing it as a sort of physical line. He meets the winged guy and he walks off, right? So that's his journey. He starts high, crashes down to earth, and leaves, becomes just like everybody else, in that lovely comment about kind of individuality that we had from Yasmin. So what about the boy, right? Think about the boy's journey. Okay, he starts off on Earth, right, with a group of boys. They're all together, but only he follows the winged guy to the chainsaw man. Then he takes the wings. He gets the idea, I'm going to take these for myself, and he runs. And if you look, he actually runs, as you'll see in a second, because I'll turn the page over for you. So just get all my editing tools out of the way. He actually runs up the stairs. So a physical reversal, the complete opposite of our winged guy. The winged guy falls to earth. They move from difference, from being unique to being just like everybody else. Whereas the boy physically makes the opposite journey. So even someone's physical journey through space in a story isn't just a physical journey. It's also, as some of your wonderful comments have suggested, like Yasmin's and Ellie's, that sense that there's an inner journey that the physical one is representing. So he's kind of taken those wings and come back. So if I get rid of all those stages, now you may remember that I also showed you before this the covers, 3 covers of the Pop Gun, or from the first hand-drawn zine to the Dark Horse comic to the co-owned version. In all of these, the wings are now on the boy. So something happens to him through this experience. They become his. They become a part of him, and he gets to fly, gets to experience them. You've been brilliant so far. So having looked closely and carefully at this text, really spent time with it, I'm next inviting you to take on a creative task. Just for the next 5 minutes or so, I want you to choose any of these characters. Oh, and we forgot to also talk about the chainsaw guy. Now, I was talking about change. Now, both the boy and the winged man change. This tells me, right, there was a comment in the chat about this panel being the transition where the boy becomes the main character, right? We know characters are central to a story because they change. The chainsaw guy, if we were going to draw his line, right? So he starts off, right? He's sitting down on his box. He gets up to cut off the wings on this page, looks at them, checks it's all right, throws them back into the bin, and then sits down. In other words, he doesn't change. This is how I know he's a secondary character. But that doesn't mean that his perspective isn't interesting, because is this his job? Is this what he was actually waiting for? Was he one of these people himself? How did he know what were those coins and what's he going to use them for? So, like I said, I'm now inviting you on a creative challenge, short creative assignment. I'd love you to write on a pad, on a phone, on a computer, just for 5 minutes without really criticizing or editing your writing. Just see what comes up just for 5 minutes from the point of view of any one rather of those 3 characters, and you're writing in the first person, right? And you have a look. I'm giving you a little bit more guidance. I've said 10 minutes, but you got really engaged with the writing. So I'm going to say 5 because I want to have time for a bit of sharing and questions. Remember, you can always develop this afterwards. And if you're interested to know what happens next, you can also look out for popcorn or get hold of it. Right. So you're just for the next 5 minutes, I'm asking you to imagine you are one of these characters. Think about the story. What are you going to write? What will your text add to the inner life of our character that we don't already know? How will it interact with the images of the story that we've seen? Okay, so asking you to just write the next 5 minutes, just without stopping or criticizing yourself. Then I'm going to give you a kind of heads up when 5 minutes are over. And I'm going to invite you to look back over what you've written and choose a favorite sentence to share in the chat. I'm going to ask for who's looked at which characters. So first, I'll probably follow the order of the characters. You can choose the winged guy. I'm going to say, has anybody written the winged guy? Can we hear a sentence or so from yours? Then anyone who's written from the perspective of the boy, and finally anyone who's written from the perspective of the chainsaw guy. So over to you. Pens or keyboards poised. Just for 5 minutes, try and write the journey or experiences of your character. You can choose any moment in the story. It's up to you. Off you go. I don't interrupt you, but I meant to say, if you're stuck or you're not sure what to do, or you've got a question, please ask away in the Q&A. Otherwise, I'll leave you to write for the next few minutes. Hi, Ashley, you're asking, can you add another character? Yes, of course. Can. Just under 2 more minutes. Okay, and this is a short writing exercise. Feel free to continue this afterwards, but if you just would like to finish the sentence that you're currently writing, and then just have a look back, and in the Q&A chat that what you've been using, let me know, first of all, anyone who took the winged guy as their character, give me a line from your version. Okay. Come to Ashley a bit later if they want, because they've created or introduced another character, which I'm interested and intrigued by. But yes, anyone who chose our winged character, pop just a line you like from your version into the chat so you can share it. Come on, guys, don't be shy. Okay, perhaps if people haven't chosen that character, I'll just open the floor to you in general. So just a line from whichever character you've taken, just a line, put in a line that you like. Great. So Ellie's clearly chosen the winged man. The glass shattered all around me in an alarming manner, but I remained unscathed. Right? So that there's that lovely contrast between shattered and unscathed. Right? It's always hard to imagine. Right? Breaking glass is a classic sound of an accident, of something going wrong. And here, right? The alarm is just in the glass, not in the character. So that's great. Thanks, Ellie, for starting us off. Any other versions or sentences from Journey of the Winged Guy? That's that great initial moment. I push myself up, shaking off the shock of the landing. I'm fine, of course. I'm always fine. Okay, again, we're starting to get another moment of the character. You've got that lovely alliteration, shaking off the shock. But then that sense that actually this is part of a wider story. I'm fine, of course. I'm always fine. That's a lovely moment of characterization. Great stuff. So what about our boy? Anybody who's chosen the boy or even the chainsaw guy? Thanks to you guys for giving us little tasters or trailers of if this was your Netflix version or the narrated version of our winged guy. What about the boy or the chainsaw guy? Great. Someone's posted here. My small arms clutched the mass of black feathers, surprised at how much they weighed. They weren't particularly smooth, not particularly soft, but I knew this was a treasure. That's lovely. So again, that sense of the mass, the size of the feathers compared to the boy, that sense which we detail added, which we don't know just from looking at the story, that they're heavy. That's a great detail added because again, we think of wings as light. So I love that image. It makes me think of them as heavy with significance and meaning. They weren't particularly smooth nor particularly soft. I knew this was a treasure. That's lovely. So again, this sense of roughness, like a rough diamond, and of something precious. Lovely little fragments of writing and storytelling. Any other views or versions? I know, so saying that somebody wanted to introduce a new character. But yeah, anyone else who hasn't shared a version? Anyone? Great, got a couple. Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, a few of you adding. I took the coins without hesitation because that's what I do. I can't afford the luxury of choice in the jobs I take. I can't afford the fear I felt in that moment. Lovely layered portrait of our chainsaw guy in that moment where he first takes the coins, the luxury of choice, and I can't afford the fear. So afford here becomes a metaphor, psychological metaphor about money. That's a lovely detail. I had another take on the boy. What are you doing, right? He looked up at the huge man, right? Just under the light shafts on the winged man's feathers. So I watch in astonishment as he dumped the majestic black wings heartlessly in the bin, right? So that cruelty, the emotion that the boy was feeling. Brilliant. So you can see how reading as a writer actually has changed or transformed your writing, right? There's lovely moments of detail, lots of interesting ideas. So feel free to develop this, but this is a classic example of how you might work in university, opening up a text to have different answers, different possibilities, and then to find your own creative response, to use it as what's called a prompt or a trigger for your own creativity. So it's our time together, I hope, has been fruitful and interesting and inspiring for you. I would just invite you to, if you want, even at this stage, to dip your toes in further and become part of the Middlesex Creative community. There's a brilliant website called creativewritinghq.com. I mean, if I share with you the actual website page and show you a little bit better. It looks like this. So you've got a calendar, creative calendar. You can sign up and then you get regular emails and inspiration and inspiring goodness from our creative writing team. There's a calendar of festivals and events that people can join up to. There's brilliant free resources, like there's a creative types quiz you can take to see what kind of creative practitioner you are. And there's loads of free resources like creative writing tips. There's also stuff about the team. So you can see much more in detail about some of the amazing teachers I work alongside in journalism, film, game writing, and TV. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the session. I've enjoyed working with you on this comic story, and glad you've enjoyed it. And yeah, please be in touch. I should also say, I wanted to just quickly share with you the very last slide, because it also has my email, which is just my initial a.kahn, K-A-H-N, @mdx.ac.uk. It'd be lovely to hear from you if you've got any other thoughts or questions. Otherwise, wish you an inspiring and creative rest of the day, and really do invite you, thanks, that's posted in the chat, the link, creativewritinghq.com. Do join, there's lots of fantastic stuff on there. Many thanks, take care, all the very best.